Hi everyone, welcome to Perspectives on Admissions. My name is James Kim. I'm an Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Yale. I'm also a Yale alum. I was class of 2011. I studied astrophysics while I was here. Thank you, first of all, to the 1,500 high school seniors who responded to our survey. We're going to be using your responses to guide this conversation. The most popular responses were the college application essay, the interview, as well as the teacher recommendations. So those are what we'll be discussing today. We're also going to talk about the various ways to apply to Yale, including early action, regular decision, and QuestBridge. With us today, we have three current Yale College students. So we have Abdul, Jinchen, and Dave. They're going to be introducing themselves and also talking about their perspectives on the Yale application process.
Hi everyone, my name is Abdul. I'm a junior studying sociology and education studies at Yale. I'm from West Haven, Connecticut, and I applied using the QuestBridge system and then was deferred into a regular decision.
Hi everyone, my name is Jinchen. I'm a sophomore studying economics and global affairs, and I come from Houston, Texas, and I applied through the regular decision round, but I was a QuestBridge finalist.
Hey y'all, I'm Dave. I am a senior from West Philly and currently a theater studies major, and I applied to Yale through regular decision.
I do want to point out before we get started that, of course, we're here at Yale, we're talking about the Yale admissions process, but a lot of the advice we give in this video will also be more broadly applicable to selective college admissions in general. So keep that in mind, and I guess we'll get started. So the first thing I want to mention before we even get into the essay is just to mention what might be the most important thing about admissions, which is that we use a holistic evaluation process. And so everything matters. When we're considering applications, it's not a computer, it's a real life human being behind these applications, reading from cover to cover. And when we're reading those applications, we're really considering two questions. Who will contribute the most to the Yale community and who will take advantage of Yale's amazing resources? And so when we're answering those two questions, really everything has to matter. The transcript, the school profile, the standardized test scores, those things will address students' academic potential and ability to thrive in our very rigorous courses here at Yale. The list of extracurricular activities that addresses the breadth of a student's passions outside of the classroom, the recommendation letters, the essays, the interviews, those things speak to a student's personality. They sort of round out the character. So again, everything matters, and a good way to remember this are the ABCs, so academics, breadth, and character. We're really looking at every single piece of the application to form a holistic picture of every student. So that being said, let's go straight into the essays. I'm sure that many of you are thinking very seriously about what you want to write about and how to write about that topic. So just to let you know broadly how we use the essays, this is a place for you to speak to the admissions officers directly. It's one of the very few places in the application where you get to do that. And so the most important thing when it comes to writing the essays is to make sure that you write it in your own voice. It doesn't actually matter that much what you choose to write about, what topic you pick. We end up each evaluating about 3,000 essays every year, so really after a certain point there's no such thing as a unique essay topic. I really say just pick something that you care about and then write it in your own voice. Make sure that you have it edited by a close friend or family member and ask them if it actually sounds like you. Again, this is one of the very few places in the application where you get to speak to your admissions officer directly and give them a sense of who you are and what your personality is like. So with that being said, let me turn it over to the students to just talk a little bit about their own experiences with writing the college admissions essay.
Yeah, so I think with the essay, the way I kind of approached it was trying to figure out what side of me hadn't been seen by the admissions office, and it was a chance for me to be kind of personal and honest, and there's kind of this pressure of oh, how do I make something sound like me, what do I even sound like, and I feel just my approach to that was just thinking all right, how can if this essay was a conversation with an admissions officer, how can they get to know me through my writing, and it was not a chance, it's not meant for you to show off or brag or hair flip. That's for the that's you do that with your transcript and everything. This is a time for us to be yo, who are you, how do you write, and how would you interact with this place, like not through numbers, not through grades or anything like that? It's just like an open kind of forum for you to kind of explore how someone can get to know you through writing.
So the way I approached my essay writing was I took it as a chance to kind of reflect on the past couple years or even before then, to kind of think about who I am and what made me the person I am today. And also I thought about the aspirations I wanted to have, what I wanted to do in the future, and all of that kind of helped me shape my essay. So I started early, thinking that, you know, like college application is a very stressful time, especially because when you're a senior, not only do you have classwork, you have all these applications, other things to juggle. So I tried to start over the summer and brainstormed, but the key was just having thoughts down for me. I think that really helped me write essays because I am really scared of writing papers and stuff. So when I eventually got something down on the paper, I could work over the drafts and just keep editing to get to something that I was proud of.
Yeah, I think for me, like at some point when I started applying to colleges, I thought I had to find something really interesting about myself that I probably didn't notice beforehand. So I was like spending summer worrying, like, oh, should I like go on a marathon? Should I do something that has some kind of deep meaning to it to an admissions officer? And then it was only to a certain point when I like talked to a guidance counselor, talked to my family a bit more, and just understood like the parts of my life that meant so much to me and the things that I like to talk about in regular conversation. And I thought that was what I could best put on paper and explain to an admissions officer about why I should go to Yale, why I should go to any college. I think like the personal is so deeply important in the admissions process, but it's also just the context that you come from and how the context has affected you overall. Because I think if my admissions officer didn't know where I came from, then she may have not understood like who I was, and if she didn't know who I was, then she wouldn't really care about where I came from. So it's kind of like a multi-layer thing. And since I had also applied through QuestBridge, I was able to put multiple essays in. I added a second one, and through my second essay, I got to talk more about the environment I'm from, while the one I used for Yale was more about me. And so I think if you have the opportunity and if you're applying through QuestBridge or something like that, you should take that chance and go ahead and add more information about yourself.
So I think you'll hear that a common thread here is all three of our students here put a lot of thought and time into their essays, and they weren't trying to necessarily impress the admissions officer as their primary goal. They were trying to get themselves across. And you know, the admissions officer being impressed, that kind of happens after the fact, when you've told your story and put a lot of thought into this essay. The second topic that you all wanted to hear about was the college interview. This can be a very intimidating thing for a lot of students, possibly yourself included. This might be the first time you're actually doing a sort of professional interview with another adult. And so it can be nerve-wracking, and I just want to say for us, this is not meant to be a scare tactic or something that should be very intimidating. It's meant to be another one of those places where we get to hear from you directly as opposed to, you know, secondhand through numbers or recommendations. And so treat this as your opportunity to, you know, get your personality across and have a face-to-face meeting with someone associated with Yale, whether that's an alumni or a current student. So we do offer two types of interviews here at Yale, and our peer institutions also offer one or both of these types of interviews. So we have on-campus interviews and we have off-campus interviews. If you do have a chance to visit our lovely campus, I would recommend looking into our on-campus interviews, which are at our admissions office with current Yale seniors who are trained to do interviews. Those are about half an hour. After this casual conversation, you know, it's not meant to be, again, not meant to be super formal. Dress appropriately, but you don't have to come decked in a full business suit or anything like that. Once that half-hour conversation is over, the senior will write up a report and put it into your file. Off-campus interviews are similar. These are offered with alumni who live in your area, so these are for students who don't get a chance to visit our campus. And the way that works is once you've submitted your application to Yale, we'll send your contact information to Yale College alumni who live in your area, and they will reach out to you by phone or by email to set up a half-hour appointment somewhere locally in a public place like a library, a Starbucks, something along those lines. Again, it's a casual conversation. They'll speak to you for half an hour and then they'll write up a report afterwards and send it over to us so we can put that in your file. And this is really a chance for us to get to know you, to meet you, and it's also a chance for you to ask your questions, right? So the people you'll be speaking to will be very closely tied to the Yale College community because they'll either be students or have been students at Yale. So please make sure you come ready to ask thoughtful questions and find out more about this school that you are applying to. With that said, I'm going to turn it over again and see if our students here have any thoughts on the interview process.
Yeah, so when I was going through the interview process, I had an off-campus interview, but as being a local student, it was kind of weird where I came to Yale for my off-campus interview. I was just at the Starbucks across the street from the Yale Art Gallery. For my interview, I was really nervous just because I didn't have time to change. I was coming straight from school and I was freaking out. But then when I went into my interview, I noticed that the person was just casually there, ready to talk to me, had gotten me coffee already, and just kind of a very relaxed setting. And I think that's something to keep in mind when you're going into any of these college interviews. The person there is not trying to scare you. They're not trying to tell you that you will or will not get in. They're just trying to learn more about you. So I think once I was in that moment, I was able to talk about myself, talk about the person with them, and just understand Yale. And I think if you use that opportunity to ask your questions that you couldn't really ask an admissions officer or someone else before, and if you use it to really explain all the things that you couldn't really write down on paper because they were too stuck in your brain, then that's going to be the best interview for you. I definitely had that experience, and that really helped me out, or at least made me feel like I put everything I possibly could into that part of the application.
Yeah, I think a big thing about it is just to have fun in a lot of ways. I feel there's a lot of pressure often put on admissions in general. You always have to put your best self forward and be the best and always maintain that level. But I feel at the end of the day, what it is it's an opportunity to talk about yourself, which you don't get that. You don't get that often. Just to sit there and be yo, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. But at the end of the day, it's a fun chance just to be yourself and show it off.
And ultimately, I had a lot of fun with my interviews because they were a chance to get to know an alumni of the school, because I had alumni interviews since I'm from Texas, so it's really far for me to be on campus. But my interviewer studied architecture, and she worked in space architecture. So in the end, not only was the conversation about me and what made me excited, it was also me trying to learn about her work and kind of see where her life has taken her now. So we've become friends through our interview. So it's not a thing that to be fair, I was kind of nervous for it beforehand, but now looking back on it, I wouldn't say it's a thing to stress out over. What I did was just I kind of practiced interviewing with my parents and my friends, where they would ask me questions what makes you excited, what do you want to do, stuff like that. So it's good practice to have with your friends and parents beforehand.
Could you guys give some examples of what are good questions to ask of your interviewer versus questions that might not be so productive?
Yeah, I think a few questions I asked were how was your Yale experience? What is it like studying at Yale and participating in a bunch of other activities? Because I was really worried about the balance of things. And I just generally asked questions about financial aid experience and just going through a lot of the bureaucratic processes, because a lot of schools may go through those differently. So I tried to get both the systematic and the social ideas through my questions.
Yeah, certainly. I asked those questions, but I was also very interested in the specifics that each school had. So, for example, I was interested in international relations and getting involved with a lot of these social impact groups on campus. So I asked questions about kind of organizations on campus to see how they might appeal to my interests.
I perhaps made the mistake of not asking any questions during my interviews. So I'm still a young child. But what I wish I had asked, about the transition to Yale and come from a place that is very different from this campus, and how you kind of balance that and maintain your sense of home while also being in your new home, which is going to be where college should go to.
So basically questions that a person could only answer in person as opposed to something you can look up online,
Yeah.
right? So
sure.
those are the best kinds of questions. The last portion of the application that we want to discuss today that you all requested is the teacher recommendation letter. So we, like most schools, most of our peer institutions, we require 2 teacher recommendation letters, and we ask that these come from your academic teachers. For us, academic means math, science, English, social studies, or foreign language. So those are what we consider academic courses. The reason we ask for these is that, of course, we do want to hear from the teachers how you do in an academic setting, how you participate in class discussions, things like that. But we also want to hear from teachers who know you well and can speak to your personal characteristics as well, about how you are as a leader, how you influence your peers, what you're passionate about, what you come up to talk to the teacher about after class. I mean, these are the things that a teacher who has had you for a year or more can really speak to in great detail and write compelling anecdotes about. So please make sure that as you're considering who to ask for your teacher recommendation letters, think about who not only saw you do well academically, but also knows your personality and can write these rich, compelling anecdotes about you. So we have 3 students here, so presumably each of you got at least 2 teacher recommendations. Do you have any tips about who to ask and how to ask for those letters?
Right. Definitely. So I plan ahead for recommendation letters because I knew that different schools wanted different things. So I guess over the summer before senior year, I kind of thought about which teachers I got really close with, who really cared about me, not only because I did well in their classes, as you were saying earlier, but also I know that they know me kind of more personally than just a student in their class. So one of the teachers I asked was my math teacher, and it's because I've talked to him a lot of just in between classes. We were pretty much friends. It's just I feel like he has a better sense of who I am, not only as a math student but also as a person. So our school has this neat form where you kind of not only ask the teacher for a recommendation letter, but you also provide kind of information on what you do outside of classes, your interests, your goals. So if your school doesn't offer that, I would recommend writing something up for your teacher so that they can have something to refer to. One of my other teachers that I asked a recommendation letter from was from my English teacher, and I really enjoyed her class, so when I asked her to write me a recommendation letter, we had a very nice conversation about kind of the things I enjoyed from her English classes, and I think that was really helpful as well.
I think for my letters of recommendation, I went to one teacher who knew me very well academically because he was the most challenging teacher I'd ever had, and then one teacher that knew me really well as a person. And even though obviously I went to both of their classes, the one that knew me very academically saw the progress that I had in school, while the other one just knew how I grew as a person very well. So I think when I put those 2 letters in, they showed 2 sides of me that are important to the admissions process. And the one that knew me very well, she could talk to me all the time. She would have a lot of conversations with me, so I wouldn't even really need to fill out that kind of form for her. And with the other one, I wrote up a whole list of all my activities and all the things I was interested in. So he at least had a very strong base to write off of, and so he knew my life and where I was while I was doing work in his class. So I think if you kind of provide the teachers that you're asking for a recommendation from, if you ask them for that, you should really provide them all the necessary base information. But also feel free to have regular conversations with them, because a lot of the most informal things about you will really hold an impression on them, and that's something they can mention in their letters later on.
Yeah, I think going off of that, I think for me, I wanted the teachers who I thought would fight for me to get into Yale, and because at the end of the day, it's kind of what they're doing is they're trying to say yo, you should admit this person because they're awesome and here's why. So I think I just sought out those teachers who knew me on enough size so they could do that.
Jinchen, I like what your school does where you provide some context for them to build their letter off of, because I think that even if a teacher knows you really well and you have regular conversations with them, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to remember that time in the classroom where you led a class discussion on this really awesome topic, or you work with them on this project for an extracurricular activity. So it's always good to, when you find the teachers you want to ask recommendation letters from, also just remind them of the things that you've done with them that they were impressed by, so they can make sure to include those in those letters. So we're going to switch gears a little bit now and talk about the different ways that you can actually apply to Yale, specifically with regard to timeline. And so we have an early action process, and then we have a regular decision process. And sort of separately, we are a QuestBridge partner school, so students can apply through the QuestBridge process, which happens to overlap more or less with the early action timeline. So I want to speak very briefly about each of those things, and then our students here can speak to their own experiences going through those cycles. So we are a single choice early action school. The deadline for early action is November 1st, and for students who apply early action, they will hear from us by mid-December about their decision. A little bit about what single choice early action means. The single choice refers to the fact that if you apply to Yale early, you're signaling to us that we are basically your first choice school. So if you apply early action to Yale, you actually are not permitted to apply to any other private university's early program, whether or not it's restrictive, whether or not it's binding. It does not matter. If you apply early to Yale, you cannot apply to any other private university's early program. That being said, because we're early action as opposed to early decision, if you apply EA to Yale and are admitted, you can still apply to other universities through their RD, regular decision programs. Your reply date for us is not until May 1st, and so you can wait all the way up to the last minute to let us know whether you're going to matriculate or not. So that's the difference between EA, which is what we have, and early decision, which is what some of our peer institutions have. So that's how single choice early action works here. We also have the regular decision round, so the deadline for that is January 1st. And if you apply RD, you will hear back from us by the end of March about your admissions decision. Again, the reply date for that, it would be May 1st, so you'd have basically the month of April to let us know. And finally, QuestBridge. So we're a QuestBridge partner school. We are one of 36. QuestBridge is an organization that exists to help match low-income, high-achieving high school students with universities across the country. And we are a partner institution, and so we match with a certain number of QuestBridge scholars every fall around the same timeline as early action, and then we admit other QuestBridge finalists during the spring as well. And we actually have 2 QuestBridge scholars here, so I'm going to let them speak to some of the details of that process. But just I wanted to let you know that we really like partnering with QuestBridge because we find that a lot of students who might otherwise be discouraged from applying to a university like Yale or one of our partner institutions actually get a lot of support through that organization and are able to find a lot of success in our admissions process. So with that being said, let's hear a little bit about QuestBridge first, and then as well as the regular decision process as well.
So when I was applying to QuestBridge, first I had to apply to the separate program from Yale and become a finalist. After a few weeks and I learned that I became a finalist, I put in my application to Yale and a few other partner colleges for QuestBridge. And basically what I really liked about the application and the process was that even though it was a little extra work for the regular college application, I got to put a lot more information about myself that colleges really wouldn't have known. I remember there was a section on like what kind of music you like, and I knew that like there's no way that my admissions officer was going to know that I liked hip hop unless I put it on QuestBridge. And that was, as I mentioned before, a space where I could put another essay about myself. And so when I was applying to Yale and had my QuestBridge application attached to it, that really added extra fodder, I guess, to what my application looked like. I ended up not getting a college match, which is when the partner college says, like, yes, we'll accept you through the QuestBridge process. But my application from QuestBridge was still moved forward and used in the regular decision process as well. So all my work was still used in terms of how they would make a decision on my acceptance. And then through regular decision, I was accepted.
Yeah, so I found out about QuestBridge actually junior year because they have a junior year program called Quest Prep Scholars. And so I applied to that, and that's where they kind of tell you what college match is, and they kind of help you prepare for that. So I think the QuestBridge process started in about early August, and so that's when I really started working on my application materials. So I applied through QuestBridge to their college match program and was accepted as a finalist. However, they have an option to opt out of match. So I actually didn't go through match because I wasn't quite ready yet to apply to and commit to the colleges that you have to rank. So instead I applied regular decision afterwards to get more time. So, but QuestBridge was really helpful in terms of the support that they offered, the advice that they gave, and it was a community of people who supported each other as well. So.
Yeah, I was pretty standard. I just applied through regular decision. That's about it. Nothing special. It just kind of happens.
Regular.
I'm normal. But yeah, it just kind of happens. It's cool.
I'm like, you weird kid.
A lot of students will ask about the advantage of applying early action versus regular decision. So I want to clarify that a little bit. If you are going to have a strong application ready to go by November 1st, and Yale is a school that you are very, very interested in, then by all means apply early. You'll know from us earlier whether you've been admitted or not. And so that is an advantage. But it's not an advantage in the sense that we relax our criteria at all for early action. We would only admit a student early if we were confident we would have admitted them regular decision anyway. And so it's not easier necessarily to get into Yale early versus regular decision. In fact, I believe that Jinchen, well, you can speak to your experience applying early versus regular.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I definitely considered when I was looking at the colleges to apply to Yale early because it was one of my top choices. But then I realized that it would have, like as you said, benefited from more time, and I knew that because you guys stated very strongly that there's no advantage to applying early versus regular. So that's why I was like, I thought it'd be fine to apply to regular decision. So.
So you really want to ask yourself, by November 1st, will you have the strongest application possible? Think about whether your fall semester senior grades would actually add value to your application. Think about whether your teachers will have enough time to write your strong recommendation letters. Think about whether you have the time to actually put a lot of thought, as we mentioned earlier, into your essays and get them revised enough times. If the answer to all those questions is yes, then absolutely early action would be a good process for you, but otherwise there's no disadvantage to waiting until January 1st and applying regular decision. A note about our holistic evaluation process. Really, when it comes down to it, what that means is we're looking at every application within the context of that student. And so we're not comparing this school to that school. We're really looking at the student within the context of the community and of their own high school setting. So that's why we don't say there's any sort of strict cutoff when it comes to GPAs or test scores or class rank or anything like that. We're trying to determine within the context of where you grew up and your school setting, did you really take advantage of all the resources that were available to you? And so what I would really strongly emphasize is never let your test scores or your GPA discourage you from applying. Think about how you can present your story to show us that you really maximize the opportunities available to you.
Like in my experience, one of the admissions officers from Yale actually came to visit my school, and I thought it was really helpful for me just because I knew a Yale admissions officer understood the context I was coming from in terms of my school, in terms of the teachers that I have and the types of classes I take. And then furthermore, I got to talk to my guidance counselor more, and she told me that she sends in the school report and she sends in this profile that says like the percentage of students and all the things that we have available. So I wasn't applying blindly. I kind of knew that they knew where I was coming from the start, and so I was more comfortable in the end.
Right, and that's a good point. All the admissions officers here at Yale have their own admissions territories. So I happen to be the admissions officer for Long Island, Ohio, except for Cincinnati, and Western and Central Pennsylvania. And because I have just those territories, I do have the chance to get very familiar with them, with the various geographical areas, with each of the school's contexts. And that helps me evaluate each student based on where they actually are, instead of trying to compare them to each other. It's like apples to oranges.
Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to visit our website or contact us.